It avoided the problem incredibly by simply denying the existence of these columns.
Massive steel beams for the core columns.
Even though those columns, I'm not making this up. These columns were the unique feature of these towers when they were first built. So, the Commission report, after saying falsely that most of the weight of each tower was borne by the steel columns in its exterior walls, this supposedly authoritative report said the interior core of the buildings was a hollow steel shaft in which elevators and stairwells were grouped. Such a desperate lie is a sure sign of a cover-up.
As the south tower begins to fall, we can see a dark smoke collapse zone at the top and the corner structure intact. A light-colored dust detonation zone quickly progresses down the side of the tower while the corner structure remains intact. Within 3 seconds, the detonation zone has become roughly 30 stories tall, with the dark smoke collapse zone far above.
You have 2 110-story office buildings. You don't find a desk. You don't find a chair. You don't find a telephone, a computer. The biggest piece of a telephone I found was half of the keypad, and it was about this big. The building collapsed to dust.
No. There were no explosions at the World Trade Center, gushes the official conspiracy theory. There were no bombs in the buildings. It was refined kerosene burning for 102 and 56 minutes in the north and south towers respectively. You see, what happened was, the steel, it got hot, because, well, you know, it was a lot of jet fuel in there burning, and the hot fire got hotter. That central core was hit real hard, probably made the hot fire even hotter. All at the same time, those cheap lightweight floor trusses, the perimeter was actually the building's support because of those winds that blow hard. Then it heated enough so, well, the fire was really hot, and these are really big and really heavy buildings, so when the lightweight steel trusses were exposed so long to the fire, well, yes, of course. It has to turn the concrete to powder. Oh, and the stuff on the steel fell off, so without the fireproofing material, well, you know, it probably fell off. Lots of the stuff fell off, so the steel got hot, so it must have fell off. So it was inevitable, because it's clear that nothing could have survived those hot jet fuel fires. You know, it was jet fuel burning in there, really hot jet fuel, and furniture and whatnot. Lots of hot burning stuff was burning in there real hot. It's all in the 911 Commission report. Isn't it obvious? Why do you ask? And there you have it. Initial collapse always leads to total collapse in big steel frame buildings with floor trusses. No bombs anywhere in any of the buildings. So when Larry Silverstein, lease owner of WTC, told PBS that they blew up Building 7, he was also hallucinating, or he misspoke, or it wasn't really him, or he didn't mean what he said, or rhetoric.
Getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Indeed, those raging fires in those black holes carved out by the airplanes heated the trusses evenly enough and hot enough to where hundreds of beams gave at the same exact moment, thus causing total collapse via the pancake theory. Forget about thermal conductivity, because it's not even mentioned in the 911 Commission report. If you know anything about thermal conductivity in steel, then you are most likely incredibly insulted by the fire theory. If you do not know anything about thermal conductivity in steel, ask a welder or a steel worker how long it would take to heat the entire skeleton of the building up. Also ask them why they bother with electric arcs and bottled oxygen to cut steel when a few gallons of jet fuel will do the trick. They don't want you to ask them where a photo can be seen showing this stack of floors, otherwise you may begin to understand that those floors were made up of a lightweight concrete and they were blown to smithereens, causing the volcanic-like clouds otherwise known as a pyroclastic flow.
People starting to run away from the scene, and I turned in time to see what looked like a skyscraper implosion. Looked like it had been done by a demolition crew. The whole thing just collapsing down on itself, and another big, huge plume of gray and white smoke shooting up into the air, and then more of the smoke billowing up the street here.
Once again, our definition of a pyroclastic flow. Hot gases carrying dust and debris flow along the ground with a fluid motion. It requires explosive energy to generate the necessary heat, dust, and debris. Turbulence and fluidization of debris are characteristic.
They hope you do not see the picture of the woman standing on the edge of the tower where the airplane entered the building, and after the fire had died down. After all, if you saw a live human being standing on the edge of the impact floor holding onto a nearly molten steel beam, it would be hard to sell the official conspiracy theory that 1500-degree fires on the impact floors is what caused the building to collapse. It's good to know that the government is there protecting us from mind-bending anomalies such as the tapes in which, for over a year, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, with the blessing of the United States Justice Department, refused to release. So what in the name of box cutters could have been on those tapes? Tapes that were withheld from Americans until a court order forced the government to release? It turns out that the tapes were the only recordings of firefighters that had reached the impact floors. You remember the floors that had 1500-degree fires in them? Sure, you remember those 1500-degree fires that heated all of the steel trusses enough to cause them all to give at once, which started the initial collapse, which we now know always leads to total collapse along with pulverizing any non-metallic material into a pyroclastic flow? You should recall it is inevitable in large steel frame skyscrapers with floor trusses. It seems these firefighters were mistaken when they reported to isolated pockets of fire that they could knock down with 2 lines.
We got 2 isolated pockets of fire. We should be able to knock it down with 2 lines. Where you know that? 78th floor, numerous 1045 cold horns.
Evidently these firefighters did not realize that the entire floor was engulfed with 1500-degree fires that were about to cause a controlled demolition-like collapse of the entire building, including the 47 steel columns, which were nearly a quarter mile in length. Well, this oversight by the firefighters is completely understandable. After all, remember the picture of the lady shown standing on the impact floor looking over the edge. Evidently she also did not realize that she was standing in 1500-degree fires and leaning on a beam that was so hot it was about to shoot hundreds of feet horizontally, causing the building to collapse perfectly, symmetrically and totally. This woman looking over the edge was most likely signaling for help. New York firefighters went into the building and climbed 78 flights of stairs to answer that call for help. Little did they know that their own government was going to blow up the building around them. The surviving firefighters were told to publicly shut up about what they heard, saw and felt. Can you imagine watching your brothers murdered? Then you are threatened with criminal charges if you talk about it.
Later, we have the photographs of the victims standing in the impact holes from the aircraft begging for help for 20 to 30 minutes. How could they survive heat that would melt through giant 4-foot steel girders? The answer is they couldn't. And the firefighters are on record as saying the fires were almost out. The fact is, the temperatures had dropped dramatically. The fires were almost extinguished. The people were in the open wounds in the sides of the buildings begging for help. Help that did come in the form of the valiant firefighters who had the buildings blown up around them. The tape you're about to hear is from the grave, as a valiant firefighter reports that the fires were almost out. And as firefighters went public and said that the fires had almost been extinguished, the federal government ordered them under national security to stop talking to the public and told the media that all the firefighter tapes had malfunctioned. But not before firefighters had rebelled and released segments of tape, a segment you're about to hear.
What do you got up there, Steve? I'm still in voice stairway, 74th floor, no smoke or fire problem. The walls are breached, so be careful. Yeah, 10-4, I saw that on 68. Freddie, come on over. Freddie, come on over by us.